Hey everyone, so my name is Ben Lorimore, and I am currently a Fusion 360 intern at Autodesk up in Portland actually. And as Taylor said, I'm a rising sophomore at Western Washington University studying industrial design. And before I get into the Kickstarter, I just want to give you a little background of how I got to this point. So I started using Fusion about halfway through my junior year of high school, and this is the first design I ever modeled. And from any of you guys who use Fusion, you can tell that this is just a terrible model. For any of you guys who know CAD workflows, this is a bottom-up design. So that means that I modeled all the parts on the plane, they're not connected. And I didn't know how to use joints or any like move commands, so that was the final stage for a while. And I ended up 3D printing this, and since I didn't know how to measure anything, because I was like teaching myself CAD as I was modeling this, none of the parts fit, and because I used trigonometry to calculate, and I did some math wrong. And so it's funny because if I modeled this now, it would probably take me 20 minutes and everything would be super precise and perfect, but this took me 3 months and it didn't even work. I ended up fixing it, and this is what the second 3D print turned out like. And this is a render of what it was supposed to look like the entire time. And so my senior year of high school, I basically worked at this startup actually here in the Bay Area remotely called Orbis Wheels. Unfortunately, I can't show any of my work because it's all non-disclosure. But basically during my time there, I gained a lot of experience. I was modeling in Fusion almost every day. And so I came in with still pretty beginner CAD knowledge and left feeling very confident in all solid body modeling and a lot of surface. And so this is a model I did in Fusion near the end of my senior year. And so for this project, I was trying to get better at T-splines and patching. And so this took a while, but after I was done, I felt pretty confident. And then after my senior year, I really wanted some hands-on experience in a real industrial design internship. So I applied to a bunch of firms around Portland, and unfortunately I only heard back from one, which was Tarragon, which is a small soft goods firm. And so I stopped into Tarragon and I spoke with the owner, Bill Dieter, and he said unfortunately they already filled their position, but they totally would have hired me if they didn't fill it. But he then gave me the best design advice I think anyone has ever given me, which is make something that you design. So up to this point, I've drawn a bunch of my stuff, modeled it in Fusion extensively, and it's all constrained, like I can make it, but I've never actually made it, besides a 3D print. And I mean, a 3D print's cool, but it's not the same as like actually having a real product in your hands. So I took this advice really seriously and began to brainstorm some things I could make. And so for those of you who don't know, this is the desk setup by a local Portland company called Made. And so they basically make wood and leather accessories mainly for Apple products. And so back then, that was when I first really discovered them. And I really love their work. It's just beautiful. And so that was the main inspiration for the Space Cradle, the product I designed. And it was funny because when I got the idea for the Space Cradle, it wasn't like a logical ideation process. It just kind of hit me all at once. And so this is the inspiration for it. Obviously, the main inspiration comes from Made. But so I use a 3D mouse every single time I use Fusion. And for those of you who don't know what a 3D mouse is, those are all 3D mice up in the top left corner. And basically, it's not used to click at all. You can have some shortcuts programmed into it, but basically it's like a little knob and you use it to like rotate, zoom, pan, all sorts of different commands. And basically, I think it speeds up my workflow like 200%. Like I can't even work in Fusion effectively without one anymore. And for those of you who work a lot in CAD, you know when you're working for like 5+ hours, you get really sore. And so 3D Connection obviously thought of that, and they made some nicer ones, the top ones that have like built-in hand rests and stuff, and a bunch of buttons for shortcuts, but those go for like $350 a piece, and I have one of the ones down there which go for like $100, which I think is a good deal. And the ones down there have a couple buttons, but I never use them at all. And so I wanted like a hand rest so it could be more ergonomic, but I didn't even use the buttons. So I didn't really think it was worth spending like $200 for a hand rest when I was really paying for the buttons that I wouldn't even use. And then right here, this is my last source of inspiration, which is caliber longboard trucks. So I used to longboard a lot. And basically you'll see when I show you the design of the Space Cradle, but I really love the kind of curvy chamfers on that. And this is CNC'd out of aluminum. And I just think the precision of those curves are really nice. And so this is the first render of the Space Cradle after I modeled it up. And as I do with the majority of my design work, I posted it on Instagram when I was done. But what was different with this is when I posted it, it got like twice as many likes as anything I've ever posted gets. And all these people were commenting like, you should make this is super awesome, like I would buy this. I was like, wow. I was planning on manufacturing it at this point, but I was not planning on selling it. And I was like, since I'm already gonna manufacture it, I might as well like try and make some money off of this. So I decided to launch a Kickstarter for it, but before I could do that, I obviously had to make it. So I took a CNC class at my local makerspace in Portland called Hedron, and the Space Cradle cut, as you saw in the render, it's a pretty complex shape. So before I could do that with like no experience at all CNCing, I wanted to start out with like some 2D stuff. So that's the Space Cradle logo. That was my first CNC cut, and so that was pretty basic. And so the people teaching me there were really helpful with like 2D stuff and how to set up a CNC, etc. But they really only did 2D stuff, so none of them had really ever CNC'd something in 3D before. And so it was kind of a big jump for me because I had to teach myself everything. I watched a few Lars Christensen videos. I don't know if any of you watch his videos. He's really helpful for CNC stuff. But he kind of helped me more with the fundamentals, not really like the complex specific stuff that I needed. And that's where Fusion really shined, I think. So I was able to go into Fusion with no CAM or CNC experience whatsoever and basically teach myself everything. And as you'll see with the final results, I mean, I think it turned out pretty well. So I think that was really cool. It was really just easy to just look at the little pop-ups and just kind of find out what I needed to know. And so, of course, with any workflow, I had some problems and mistakes that I could go back to and change immediately. And I think everyone with any real project will run into problems and mistakes, but I think they could avoid ones that I made. And basically my main mistake, I think, was trying to do everything at once. So I'd never used CAM before, I'd never CNC'd before, I'd never made a product before, and now I was trying to do all three of those things plus launch a Kickstarter for that product all at the same time. And so I think if I did these in steps, I would have been a lot more successful and it just would have been less stressful. So to anyone thinking about doing something like this, do it in steps. It'd make it a lot easier. I ran into two major problems. The first one wasn't really related to making the Space Cradle itself. But so when I went to the makerspace, they told me that the CNC they had 3 inches of Z travel. So basically that means the bit can go up and down 3 inches. So I was like, that's great. I think the Space Cradle needed like 2.5 inches of Z. And then once I drew up all the CAM, I went to the CNC and it's like error message, error message. I'm like, what's going on? And I looked at it and it's like, oh, this actually only has 2 inches of Z. I was like, oh, well, shit, like I can't make this. I don't know what to do. But this was really, really satisfying. So I found out that the CNC was actually an open source CNC. So I found the Z plates online, pulled them up into Fusion, just add another inch, whipped up some CAM, got aluminum plates and just drilled it all out on the CNC. So basically I was modifying the CNC with itself, kind of like the self-replicating 3D printers, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Did you charge your makerspace for the upgrade?
No.
They give you a free month at least?
I think I broke some of their bits, so it's like a trade-off. And then the big problem I ran into with the Space Cradle itself was fixtures. So I don't know how much experience you guys have with CAM, But if you don't have any CNC experience whatsoever, fixtures can be a really big problem, especially with a complex cut like this. So the people at the makerspace were mainly cutting out just 2D stuff so they could put like bolts on the side and just avoid it. But as you can see here, so that's the stock I start with on the left, and this is just like steps to getting to the final product. And so you can see I cut away that entire stock, so I can't just put a bolt in there because that's not going to work. So I did a couple different things which were really hard and ended up not working until the very end when I figured out I could just drill them in from the bottom. I don't know, I never thought of that. But perfecting my toolpaths also took a lot of time. I think I went through 4 different iterations before I even got it looking good. But it was super nice because whenever I needed to make a change, like Fusion, you could just go in, change some geometry. I think I needed to change the wire pocket right there because they didn't have the tool that I thought they had, but I just went into Fusion, changed it, and all the cam updated, so that was super nice. And something that I think is super, super important for any crowdfunding campaign is building a movement behind your product. And this is something that I was doing the entire time, even from prototype, at the very beginning of the prototyping stage. So I spent a lot of time on Instagram. I created an Instagram for it, and it was on that basically every day, posting pictures of my process, reaching out to people, building connections. I also spent some time on Reddit and Facebook. And this was definitely like the most important part of my entire campaign. Like it would not have happened if I didn't go on social media. And also it was really nice kind of planning what I was gonna do during my campaign once I launched. So I put together kind of like a list of all the pictures I wanted to post on social media, dates with those, maybe like some captions. And it actually was really helpful because it can get kind of stressful when people are reaching out to you to kind of, you can forget to post because I was posting every day once I launched to kind of keep shooting out like your product so people see it, and it was really helpful. And just to prove my point that I just talked about, that media is super important, like as you can see here, 69% of my entire funding was through sites that was not on Kickstarter, which basically means I posted a link on like my Instagram profile, Facebook, Reddit, whatever, and you can see it shows like where all the referrers are. Also, I reached out to a lot of blogs and I actually got featured on Core 77, which was really cool. But it's really important to just kind of reach out, and a lot of design blogs will actually feature you. So, I mean, I'm really young. I didn't think it was that good of a product looking back, honestly, but I mean, people like to feature your stuff. And then also, I think a huge thing that I did not stress the importance of when I was planning my project is calculating a massive funding cushion. So I calculated, I think, $400 extra. So my goal had like $400 that I just could pocket. But I came close to not even breaking even because there are a lot of costs that you just don't even think of, like buying screws or buying safety glasses. And I mean, once you buy 30 of those things, like it gets really expensive really fast. And the last thing you want to do is launch a Kickstarter, fund it, and have to pay out of pocket to like fulfill your backers. And I came really close to doing that. Also, a huge thing I had no idea was even a thing with crowdfunding is people drop out. And that was really scary. If you can see right here, my campaign almost got canceled. So I think last few days I lost like 5 backers, hundreds of dollars. So that's just a good thing to keep in mind, that people can drop out whenever they want. And basically I want to end off with, I think the most important part of running something like this on the side is just to have fun. Like, definitely the greatest part of this for me was just designing a product, manufacturing it myself, and knowing that people all over the world were buying it. Like I had people in Germany, Switzerland. It's a really cool thing to do, and you shouldn't forget that. And actually, funny story, it was apparently the reason I got this job. But yeah, any questions?
go about making the leather portion?
So that is leather with an EVA cushion under it. So I took these EVA pads, routed it out in 2D, and then I sanded like a fillet on the edge so it was kind of round. And then I took the leather, like a leather cement, cemented it to the EVA, and then just cut like some tabs and like kind of hand upholstered it over the edges. That definitely was pretty frustrating.
I have two questions. One is how much time did it take for the toolpath on one item, and then also after you had it done, how much handwork did you need to do to kind of put the thing together?
The handwork was definitely the worst part. At first, I think the toolpath was like 5.5 hours because I had some tool changes. But after perfecting it, I think I got it down to like 3. So the toolpath wasn't that bad. The hand sanding was really bad because even off a CNC, like you still have a lot of routing marks, and especially with wood. Like if you're working with plastic, that's something you can get away with a little more. But with wood, you get little chips coming out. So probably about 4 hours each.
Okay. I was looking at it, I was like, that looks beautiful, like that come out of the machine, because like, it looks great though.
It took a while. All right.
Cool.